Welcome everyone here in the room who has come across great distances and short distances to be here for day 2 of the Messenger's Vigil. And welcome to you all, wherever you are viewing from around the globe. Thank you for coming to be a part of this very special and rare gathering in the world. Today is day 2 of the Messenger's Vigil, where we delve deeper into the reality of contact with intelligent life in the universe. Yesterday was day 1, where we explored the reality of a global awakening at the level of knowledge, the spiritual mind within all people. And we heard from Marshall V. Summers, and it's a very special evening, and the video is all available online. And so now we continue with that foundation built, that knowledge is within us, that who we are is not only our mind and our body, but also a spiritual mind, and that spiritual mind is connected to the greater evolution of the human race. And that is what we will go into next, which is this evolutionary path we are walking together as a human family, and the revelation contained in a new message from God that reveals what that path really is and where it's taking us, and what the next great giant leap forward will be. So in the Messenger's Vigil, we're taking a journey through these new realities as revealed in the new message from God. The Vigil really is a time to come back to your own heart and center, create an opening in your awareness from which you can feel and sense into your higher calling and the stirring of knowledge within you as it relates to these new realities. And it's a time that Marshall V. Summers, the man who has spent 34 years receiving the revelation, stops as well to pray that this spiritual power emerges in our lives and that humanity can awaken to these great evolutionary challenges now facing us all. So tonight, we're going into the reality of contact with intelligent life in the universe, what the new message calls the greater community of life. I'd like to share with you a passage from one of the books of the new message called Greater Community Spirituality. Go out on a clear night and look up. Your destiny is there. Your difficulties are there. Your opportunities are there. Your redemption is there. And so I'm sure many of us have had that experience of going out on a cold, clear night and looking up at the stars and feeling that we do have relationship out there. Perhaps that home is out there. Destiny is out there. And so this is a deeply important reality that connects to who we really are, why we came into the world, the reality of the greater community of worlds beyond. Because this really is the context, and always has been, for life on earth, but we've not been aware of it. And now our world is emerging out into that greater community, not because of what we are doing here on earth, our forays into space, for example, but because contact is underway. And we'll be speaking about the nature of contact and what is really happening in the world, what it means. But first, Patricia would like to talk a bit about the experience that many of us may be having at this time, and how this connects to the reality of the greater community.
Yesterday on Vigil Day 1, we considered all those people who are being struck, experiencing a sense of calling in the long journey in front of them. We were those people. And we still are, right? We still are. And so we spend time to think of them and their condition, you know. And yet there's added dimensions to what these people all over the world are experiencing and enduring, you know. A native condition almost. They were, I guess they might even say, I know I would, I was born with it, it seemed, you know. this sense that something big is happening. Something big is happening. Looking up at that beautiful starry sky and just feeling such a pull and an awe, time and time again. Even going out on purpose at night, just to see it, just to feel it, just to be there. What's there? Who's there? I don't know that we have those words, if we've even taken it that far in the early days. This feeling of there's a missing link. This missing link. This missing link. There's more than meets the eye. This old saying from yesteryear. There's more than meets the eye. Being in gatherings, holidays with family, etc., and looking at people and knowing they're not saying how they're really doing and what they're really feeling. And why are you sensing into that? Seeing old structures fall away. Seeing it. Oh, it can take decades, but you're seeing it almost in slow motion. And you feel like you have to prepare for something. Feeling like you're almost more than human. You look at the plant world, you relate. You look at the animals, you relate. You look at them, and you feel like, I can't only be human. There's life, that's life. You look at the natural world, the mountains, sometimes the place, if you have the opportunity, some places here in our world are absolutely, utterly planetary, and it shakes you. It just shakes you. You struggle with religion. You struggle. Or maybe you just one day feel that you need to just depart. You just need to depart. The mosques and the churches and the temples are beautiful, and from time to time, very quiet. And that's good. And that's a powerful experience. And you begin with that, and maybe you have to leave with that and go on. Your sense of revelation, your experience of revelation, if you can even identify it as such, feels like it's connected to the future more than the past. And so as we think of these people all over the world, we hold vigil for them. We are them. We're drawn to something big and inexplicable that's here now. That's here now. We want to get with what's here now. And so what is it? What is it? Reed will be exploring further the realities of people of this nature, of the nature that we all share.
Well, I think we're all living in a world undergoing rapid and unbelievable change. And we're all trying to make sense of that change. And the old structures are falling away, in some cases falling apart. And new structures don't seem to be arising that we can really rely upon and trust. So there's a lot of speculation right now about the nature of change in the world, the direction the world is taking, because the feeling is changing, most definitely, and that can't be denied. And everyone is facing that day in, day out. And what the new message from God offers is a clear picture as to the greater context. Our world exists beyond the boundaries of this earth, that really does have tremendous bearing on this time and is affecting the feeling of the world, the condition of the world, in ways that very few people understand. So if you are somebody who feels that the world has already changed and is changing out from under our feet, and that you are connected to this. You are meant to be a participant in it, to not just react to it, to survive, to be happy and fulfilled, but to actually participate in that change. Then the revelation about the coming of the greater community is something very important for you. And it's no coincidence that you're finding this awareness. It's destiny. If you're someone connected to this great next phase of human life, now dawning right over the horizon line, barely visible, but there, if you're one of these people, then the revelation of this larger context of life will be a precious key to understanding this time in the world and this time in your life. And I think the context really does explain so much. It tells us perhaps why we're here, why we are the way we are, why we have this nature and design that often feels like it just doesn't fit in with the world. The world feels too small a place for us. And some aspect of self within us that we brought here is simply given no space, no room to express itself. But that's changing now, because now there is a new revelation in the world. There's a community of people receiving this revelation and preparing for our emergence into the greater community of life. And so I'd like to share with you the picture of what the greater community is and what contact with it means. This is presented in the New Message Revelation on Life in the Universe and many other books and teachings as well, which are all available for you to read. The New Message reveals that our world is emerging into this larger panorama of life called the greater community. That we are an emerging world, a world undergoing a rapid period of development out of our deep and long-standing tribal past into a state of greater national unity and global unity, transitioning out of old identities into a new identity of being human, of all people in the world being your brother and your sister in that humanity, that is dawning in the human mind and consciousness at this time, and that this process, once begun, cannot be stopped. This process, this inevitable process of unification, however difficult and even violent, cannot be stopped. And what has precipitated this, in part, is not what we have done in the world, or our forays out into outer space, or anything like that. It's actually contact with other forms of intelligent life who've come from beyond the world for their own purposes. And that contact has been underway for some decades. And yet it is not what most people think it to be. It is in fact something very different. The universe we're emerging into is not a spiritual universe. It's not a universe that mirrors our religious aspirations and prophecies, hopes and wishes. It is a natural environment. It is an expression of nature on a vast scale, where there is competition for resources, competition for environment. And this is the universe we're emerging into as a young adolescent world, struggling with ourselves in conflict and contention, destroying our natural environment, laboring under the weight of old beliefs and traditions that do not honor the reality of a human family. So this is us stepping out now into a vast natural arena of life. And the new message from God reveals that those forms of life that we will first encounter are not enlightened space travelers or scientists. It will instead be those who make the long journey to get here for their own purposes. And these forces the new message calls economic powers, collectives who are here to gain access to our earth and its resources and its people. And that this is the real nature of contact happening in the world. And it's happening at a time when humanity is facing great waves of environmental change, a huge environmental crisis brewing in the world that is our making, the result of decades and centuries of errant use of the world's environment, pollution of its air and its waters and its soils. We're coming to this convergence point where the forces of population growth, resource depletion, environmental destruction, species loss, the loss of arable land and fresh water, the poisoning of our oceans, all of it converging upon us. And at that point as well, contact is happening. Contact with forces who would seek to use us and our disadvantaged position for their own ends. And so these two forces, the force of contact and the force of the great waves of change, these are the two greatest and most consequential events in human history. They hold the greatest power to challenge the habitability of our world by human beings in the future. And yet they are also the greatest opportunity for us to do that thing which we have never yet found a way to do, which is to finally put an end to our conflict with one another, to our constant differentiation and division within our nations and societies, and actually come to the table out of necessity for the survival of life on planet Earth. These two forces can give us that opportunity. And that has something to do with you, that has something to do with your spirituality, your higher purpose in life, should not be a wonder at all. It's quite clear why that would be. Because we are all people sent into the world to make a contribution to the time in which we live. And this time in which we live represents the convergence of these great forces of change at a planetary scale and at a greater community scale. And if we don't understand that, are not aware of that, how on earth would we ever understand ourselves? It's a question. I'm sure we've tried. And so the gift here is that we finally have the picture, or enough of the picture, to understand who we are and who we are meant to be, and the environment of life around us, where the world is going, and how we can prepare to respond to that greater direction of the human race. So this is the gift of context. And this is revealed extensively in the New Message from God and in the Allies of Humanity briefings, which are a set of communications from a group of off-planet observers who have come at the same time as the new revelation. They have come to bear witness to the ET intervention in our world, to report on it, and to confirm the great strength of the human family, which is the power of knowledge, the spiritual intelligence that lives in each and every human being on this earth. And this intelligence gives us the ability to see and know the truth clearly. It gives us the ability to protect ourselves from influence and manipulation. It activates our bond with the human family and with this planet Earth, and brings forward our natural conscience, which seems to be overlooked and overridden so often in the world right now. So the Allies of Humanity have come to call this forth. The new revelation has come to call this forth. Marshall V. Summers has come to call this forth. And this is the calling. And it is the awakening of knowledge that represents the solution and the great need in response to these planetary challenges on a scale never seen before. So with that, I'd like to share with you a passage, a spoken passage from the New Revelation. And the voice you are hearing here is the voice of the angelic assembly speaking through Marshall V. Summers in a state of revelation. And this voice was recorded and transcribed, and what you'll see here is the text and the spoken voice together.
Of beings at all levels of evolution. Humanity's destiny is to emerge into a greater community of intelligent life in the universe. This greater community represents races and nations of beings at all levels of evolution, representing an immense diversity of life. But at present, humanity knows nothing of the greater community. You only have your wishes and your fears and your aspirations to fill in the great question of what exists beyond your borders. While it is true that humanity has potential allies in the local universe, it is even more important to realize that your first encounter with intelligent life will not be with saints and environmentalists, but with resource explorers and economic collectives. Groups that search and travel to gain access to resources and to planets of biological and strategic importance. To encounter then the greater community, particularly forces from the greater community who seek to intervene in your world for their own purposes, represents not only a great threat to your freedom, but also a great shock to your awareness, to your beliefs, to your assumptions. Therefore, your contact with the greater community is not some distant future event when you finally gain the technological ability to travel into space. Your confrontation with the greater community is occurring now. It is not what you think. You are the native peoples of this world. You are being exploited. Intervention is underway and has been for decades. The new message from God speaks of this, reveals this, and warns of this. It is the greatest event in human history. It is the greatest threat and danger to human freedom and sovereignty in this world. And yet, it represents the greatest chance and the greatest possibility and the greatest need for human unity and cooperation. What is human destiny? Human destiny is in the greater community. But you must survive your emergence into the greater community, and you must survive competition from the greater community if you are to be able to function there. For your isolation is over, and you will never have it again. From this moment forward, you must build and protect human freedom and sovereignty in this world. You must protect the resources of this world and your self-sufficiency here. And you must gain the wisdom to discern friend from foe, ally from competitor. You do not have this wisdom and this discernment yet, but it can and must grow within you as an individual and within the human family. Do not think that humanity does not have promise here. For to do so, underestimates your power and your potency and the greater promise that humanity has for the future, for a future that will be unlike the past.
So, this is the essential message on the greater community. And take a moment here, see what this brings up for you, especially if you're hearing this for the first time. What does this strike in you? Is this just interesting or possibility? Something that might have struck your curiosity at some point? Or is there some seed of a greater reality in this for you that has not yet germinated, taken greater form? I remember, well, I don't, but I have heard others remember that in the early years of the revelation, the teaching spoke so mysteriously about our greater connections with life out there in the greater community of worlds, and that this time is the time of great threshold for this planet as it steps out of its age-old isolation and comes back into contact and communication with the vast arena of life. That this was the great challenge of this time and one of the great keys to understanding who we are, at least those of us who came into the world, knowing that we would come to support the world at this great threshold. And I think maybe many of us have felt that at some point, a yearning to go beyond the human plane, a fascination with space, with life out there, deep curiosity, and a fatigue and a discouragement, disappointment with, a purely human life, with purely human aspirations, goals, objectives. And this yearning, a yearning at some deep level that we've tried to fulfill in other ways, but really it's not related to this place. It's related to what exists out there. Yeah.
Yeah, wonderful. And if the yearning is strong in you, it will not let you settle down. It will not let you call this situation good or good enough. It will not let you retire. It will prod you onward, pushing you, moving you. You must go. I must find. I'm not there yet. This is good, whatever this may be, but it is not it yet. And the amazing thing is, until you find that it, you cannot stop. The it is not merely an experience within yourself. It is an experience that must be initiated by others and by greater forces around you.
So this mysterious yearning is being initiated now by greater forces around us. And at the same time, we have to know that the reality of contact is the reality of nature. In some ways, it's not, we may feel a connection to life in the universe, but it's not with those visiting our world. That's not where the spiritual connection really is. So there are different levels underway, different levels of reality. It's important to treat contact as a natural event with sobriety, objectivity, and yet honor within us that the process of stepping out into the greater community has begun. And that for some of us, this activates a deeper aspect of self that we have brought into the world. I've thought recently about reincarnation, how many faiths, spiritual traditions recognize reincarnation as a reality, that we've been journeying across many lifetimes, and here we find ourselves now, and that somehow you might be able to reclaim some aspect of that past experience. And yet now think that we may have had experiences elsewhere in the universe being life. It's not just Earth, it's life. It's the whole picture. Why not? And if there's a process of redemption underway in our world, a process of spiritual awakening, why would that be restrained just to this Earth, disconnected from everything beyond it? It's not. It's not disconnected. It is connected. And I think this is why the greater community, the reality of the greater community really does awaken this deeper aspect of memory, remembrance, perhaps a heritage, and set of past relationships even, that we may have brought into the world as the world encounters other forms of life. And we could potentially bring that deeper awareness forward to serve the world. This is deep here. And this is really what Marshall is going to speak on. Yeah.
When you think of how this has been dawning on you, potentially, dawning, coming to you, impression by impression, over the years, potentially, even since childhood. Okay. Think of that process. That has been a long process, potentially for most or many of us. Well, Reed mentions the early years of the revelation, and brings back to mind with some emotion for me that time. And seeing this greater community reality, okay, being delivered to this young man. And the context, talk about a context beginning to grow larger and larger. Yeah, the disorientation. 1 minute we thought we knew what we were doing and where we were headed with what we had been given. Okay, and then a whole new revelation would come with greater dimensions, imagery, reality. And almost nothing to do for it or with it for some time to come. And yet the pressure building, feeling the need to give, even though it's a partial gift, to give this to the world. Yeah. Aren't people waiting for this? Yeah. It was very burdensome in a way. Yeah. And to see this young man in a matter of days receive something like greater community, spirituality, a new theology. I mean, it was such a time. We were young. Yeah. Yeah. Confounding. What must we do? How do we serve this? Do we really understand this? Is it complete enough to bring forward? Oh my God, some of this needs to be a book with a title that we have to discern. Yeah. Greater community realities emerging. Yeah. So here we are today, many, many more miles down the road. Yeah. And with this revelation literally going worldwide, and people having a recognition experience with this revelation worldwide. Worldwide. It's amazing. It's amazing. So this man, we've come to realize, not only because it has been revealed, but we have come to realize that he is a messenger from God. And with that, the first in a lineage of messengers, who is a greater community messenger? A greater community messenger. Maybe more of that. This one. Yeah.
I just want to say, that we were both there. This is the wife, this is the son of this man, in whose early and young family, in the earliest days, this seed was planted at the center of our family. And it has sprouted and become a tree so large that it has displaced the home in which it was planted. The roof has come off. And what we thought was just something, I don't know what we thought. I was really tiny back then. I was having simpler thoughts. But whatever we thought, it was going to get a whole lot bigger and broader and taller, and it would outgrow us and spread out beyond us. And now it's like a tree, a gigantic tree of life that now can bear fruit in the world. And the fruit that it would bear is the awareness sparking in the minds of people around the globe, and that awareness sparking realization, and that realization sparking a journey of steps, a preparation, and then sparking participation in this larger movement that our world is now attempting to take. And it's very special to see the first of many fruit that might come off this tree. But I know at the time, I actually do have vague memories of being really, really tiny and being in the corner of the room looking at my parents, and somehow, either in my child's mind or in my greater mind at that time, which was definitely there, I could just see what was happening. I could see what was being given and the burden upon my parents, and in some sense where this would go at a very elemental level. And it is one of the greatest stories not yet told. I've always felt that, having heard parts of the story along the way from my parents.
Yeah.
That the seeding of greater community knowledge and wisdom in our world through one man and in his family and in a small group of people who came to support him, and now in a worldwide community of people, is a amazing thing to step back and see take place.
And in those early days, not only were these truths and dimensions of the greater community being revealed to Marshall, but also, if you can imagine, what is God? What is God? And when you go home from our time together, you can take the time, if you will, and go find the revelation, what is God? What is God? Received, I don't know how many years ago, decades ago, alongside what is the greater community? Yeah, what is God? I almost, at the time, felt like I just can't go on. Why? I will, but I need to get I need to be with this. Is this the God? Is this the God that I departed? Or is this the God that I'm coming home to? My God, the God that I departed, the God I'm coming home to. I can come home to God. I can come home to God. I can come home to God. Yeah. So, the messenger brings a whole new reality. This individual is not simply one who gives warning of the great hazards of the future or the present day, or provides higher standards or a greater vision of peace, cooperation, and equanimity amongst the human family. For there are many who can do this. But only a messenger from God can bring an entire new reality and change over time the awareness and the consciousness of large numbers of people, even affecting the attitudes of the entire human race. So this was being revealed to Marshall along the way.
Mm-hmm. So Marshall's going to speak to us now about this new reality of the greater community of life in which we live, that he has spent so many years holding, stewarding, slowly bringing forth into the world. And now there are people around the world who feel the awakening of that awareness in themselves and that need to know. And now the revelation is revealing this vast panorama of life, but what does it mean for us? How does it connect to us? So let's take a moment, just clear our mind and prepare to hear from Marshall.
There are people in the world who, even from a very early time in life, felt that their life would be part of some kind of great transition, some kind of sea change in human civilization. Not a peaceful transition necessarily, but a great transition. And of course, we all want to give definition to these deeper feelings, but rarely do our definitions account for the real scope of an experience that's coming from a deeper place within us. This is not the result of an intellectual pursuit, as much as it is innate intelligence telling us something, orienting us in a certain direction in life if we can follow it. Sometime in fairly recent times, we crossed an invisible line where our emergence into a greater community of intelligent life would go into another stage, greater movement. Not by us, but by those around us in the universe who know of us. Greater forces. We don't know that moment and that time. We can't account for it, perhaps, in our own experience. We did not really create it. It just means we're part of life in a larger arena. An arena in which we have always lived. And now the time has come when our isolation is over. Prior to understanding this, people will think, well, we're in a great environmental crisis, which we are, or we're going to go through a tremendous economic or political breakdown and rebuilding, or perhaps we're in a spiritual renaissance of some kind, a great spiritual upliftment and opening. Everyone trying in their own way, using different words and ideas, to give voice to an experience that we're all having, that life is changing underneath our feet. It's not going to be the same world, even of our parents. Many are hopeful, many are fearful. But somewhere in between, we need to take a position of clarity and objectivity, sobriety, knowing the difference between reality and what we think or want or believe. Last evening I said
I gave a definition of reality, a kind of practical, expedient definition, that reality is everything that is beyond our thoughts and beliefs happening. And we're either aware of it or we're not. Life is moving. There are other races in the universe who seek opportunity here. They will present themselves as benign. They've been watching us for a long time. They will speak to our aspirations. They will speak to our failures. They will speak in such a way as to give us the impression that they can provide these things for us, that we seek and cannot find. The answer to our great and growing global problems. It's all a deception. Clever. We think the universe is full of war. Our movies are like that. Films are like that, but it's full of persuasion. War is primitive to advancing races. Destructive and often needless. We're entering an environment of persuasion. Some people think, well, they haven't destroyed us, so they must be our friends. But this is thinking that war is the template for how nations interact with each other in the universe around us, and that is not true. But how would we know that? We would have no way of knowing that. It's merely a supposition, but who can tell? But the revelation from God has for the first time in history thrown open the doors to the reality and spirituality of life in our local universe. Things we need to know, we must know, if we're to make any wise decisions regarding any visitation to our world or where we stand in the face of greater powers around us. What our advantages are, what our disadvantages are. The strengths of those who are coming here and their weaknesses and limitations. Things we could not know, still stuck on the surface of this one little world, in a great panorama of intelligent life. Only the Lord of the universe could give us this. But no race in the universe knows about every other race in the universe. There's so many things we assume to be true that aren't true. So many things we have never thought of that are true in this great revelation about life in the universe called the greater community. We're hopeful, but we're unprepared. We expect great things, but we're afraid that we'll meet others like us, only more powerful. We don't know where we stand. We don't know what to do. But life has brought us to this threshold, ready or not, willing or not, able or not. So a great calling is going out into the world now to bring this great revelation to people, and with it, the awareness of spirituality in the universe, the realities of life beyond our planet, and what we must do to understand and face these things. It so amazes me that people don't know how to regard visitation to our world. And the reason is they know nothing about life beyond our world. So we put a human face on things, a human expectation. We look out at the stars and all we see is ourselves, our own thoughts and beliefs. We don't see reality. And those who do see reality begin to have a much more sober feeling about the great transition that we are now in. And there's no going back. In life, there's really never going back. There's only going forward or falling by the wayside. We have to keep pace with the movement of life. That's a challenge, but it's a good challenge. It's a necessary challenge. Without that, people become complacent and weak, self-indulgent, corrupt by forces around them or forces within them. They become despondent. They cease to be creative. They cease to be aware. People decline. In comfort and security, people decline rapidly. Life gives us these things, but also great challenge. And now we have great challenge. And we know from our experience that the greatest demonstration of people's spirit and will is at times of calamity. People are called to service, to rescue others. Great, terrible event happens in some part of the world, and rescue crews are sent from nations everywhere. Money is sent, food is sent. This is where humanity shines. This is the front line of life, and it's also the front line of our spirituality. Otherwise, people retire to some kind of spiritual suburbia and only want to be happy and think of themselves. There's no life there. There's no inspiration there. So now life has brought us to this great threshold. How will we respond? People with a greater community history are sent into the world, people that I call greater community people, a greater community person, perhaps like you, to help support humanity through this tremendous challenge. And with this tremendous challenge, a tremendous upgrade to human power and unity in the world. For there's nothing that's going to unite humanity but some greater dilemma, challenge that threatens everyone everywhere. The rich have no benefit here. Everyone is in the same boat. No nation will prevail if intervention is successful. So, many people will run away and hide or deny this. They're waiting for Jesus to come back, or they're going to enlighten themselves in the pathway of Hinduism or Buddhism, or they're going to become politically engaged. They cannot face this greater thing. But you must. If this strikes you in ways you can hardly understand, then you're connected to this. Even the people who reject this are connected to this. But they want to deal with it on their terms, through their science or rationality, or their process of reasoning. But life is not about that. Human reason is magnificent in its areas of application, but beyond those areas, it is quite hopeless. You need a different kind of intelligence now. It's innate within you. And that is what our vigil is really about, is this deeper intelligence within you, which isn't there just to make you happy and comfortable, but to engage you in life in a way that really fulfills you, inspires you, gives you strength, gives you certainty, gets you out of self-degradation and self-conflict, gets you out of a meandering, haphazard life, and engages you where you really are meant to be engaged. You may pray for God to anything, any advantage, but God has put knowledge within you to guide you. You really cannot ask for more than that. It's enough if you can respond to this. So I think the world needs to have this greater community awareness, education, preparation, or the world could be overtaken without firing a shot. The powers of persuasion and manipulation. Some people become hopeless immediately. Without hope, they become hopeless. They go from exuberant and anticipatory to hopeless, like they fell out of a 10-story building. It's a middle ground. Hope is weak without knowledge. And hopelessness is defeat before the challenge even arrives. We cannot be defeated. This is not about capitulation. The intervention of the world seeks to weaken us. If we can't be seduced, it will weaken us. It will discourage us. Even though it's made up of pathetically small numbers of individuals. And it's a vast sea of humanity who doesn't realize the power that it has, strength that it has if it is united. Now it has a reason to unite beyond national advantage or the benefits of trade or anything that we can think of. It's the survival of human civilization. It's the survival of human freedom, sovereignty in this world. Big stakes, big. So part of our message to you is what is big within you is connected to what is big beyond you. You may give your life to little things, but what is big within you is connected to the bigger picture for which you have come. And when you can begin to have the courage, it's not easy, but have the courage to face this and consider this and stay with it, already you begin to turn a corner within yourself. A corner from weakness to strength, from hopelessness to a deeper certainty and conviction. I'm a messenger sent into the world to be a vehicle to bring this great teaching to humanity. And you know, for the messengers before me, it always looks hopeless. Anything important to do always looks hopeless. But our strength comes not from hope alone, but from a deeper conviction. Okay, it's hopeless, but we'll do it anyway. Humanity is a sleeping giant, but its power cannot be used if it is still asleep. If it engaged in constant conflict with itself, which the intervention of the world will promote, it cannot turn its eyes to the universe. We have our backs to the universe. Undefended are our borders, unrecognized are our borders, unsupported are our borders. We have rights in this universe, but we do not even realize what they are. We know what has happened to the native peoples of the world facing exploration from beyond. This is a lesson of life. It is a lesson of intervention. We are now the native peoples of the whole world facing exploration and intervention. Let us not be foolish. Let us not be seduced. Let us not acquiesce. The power of knowledge within you will hold fast. Even when you feel weak, even when you don't know what to do, it will set you on a direction. It knows where you need to go. It knows who you need to meet. It knows what you need to do in life, but it must take you there. You must go without explanations. You must go because in your heart you know you must go. That is what heaven is looking for within you. Can you follow something without understanding it or having explanations? Because that's what will move your life. Humanity needs a greater community awareness now. Who will bring it to them? How will they find it? It is a magnificent gift. How can people find it? I and those who work with me are doing everything we can to bring it to the world, but it's a big world. Not everyone has to be reached, but enough people have to be reached. Intervention could be stopped if human will was expressed out into the universe. The new message will explain this, because otherwise we would never assume that to be true. We think force is what moves things. But if another intelligence can make you not want to resist, they've won you over without the use of force. They can weaken you by strengthening your weakness, by taking you astray, following peace or wealth or spiritual fulfillment, whatever will seduce you. But the real spirituality within us cannot be seduced. It will never fall for such things. This is the power and the grace that God has given you to use at this time. And this is the time. Every day now is important. Every year now is important. Every person who has a greater community heritage within them is important. But they must see clearly. There's too much seduction in the world. There's too much manipulation in the world. It is so easy to fall prey to these things. Too much human weakness. And already the feeling of the world has changed. The mental environment of the world has changed because there are foreign presences here, changing that environment. Perhaps you can feel this. Things don't feel the same as they did when you were a child, maybe. Something invisible in the atmosphere has changed. The world doesn't feel the same now. It's not just about political movements or economic changes. It's something else, much more pervasive. We have a stranger in our house changing that environment. And not everyone's going to feel it or know it or even accept it. But those who do must become strong. Must become prepared, not by themselves, because no one can prepare themselves for this. This is why there's a new message from God. Not just about personal fulfillment or bliss or happiness. If that is your only goal in life, you open yourself to all forms of seduction and persuasion. Something much greater. The protection of everything you value in this world. Protection of whatever freedom has been established in this world. Protection of all forms of human spirituality. Protection of human sovereignty and determination. This is how big this is. God's not going to speak again for anything except something extremely urgent. This is extremely urgent. And necessity is upon us and within us. You can feel it. I can only point you to the revelation that will speak of all these things beyond what I can say, to answer your many questions which will surely arise, which will strengthen you, give you courage, determination, acknowledging the fear and uncertainty that exists, yes, but to show you where your certainty really resides and how to find it, to take the steps to that deeper knowledge within you. This is how God will give you strength and courage. It's an invisible gift that serves us, even when we don't want it. Brilliant. Part of understanding who you are in the world today is part of a greater context within the world today. The great environmental change that is coming, the great ways of change, our encounter with the universe of intelligent life, the growing urgency for human cooperation, the cessation of conflict. These are the big things, and they're all interrelated. Let yourself then be impacted by this. It is unsettling. You will not feel certain within it at the outset, but it is necessary. It will take you away from little hopeless things and engage you with important, deeper things. And that is where your sense of worthiness and well-being will emerge. I pray for this in you and in the world. I'm here for this. This is not about me. This is about everyone. I pray this power and this feeling will begin to emerge in you.
Let's take a moment. Take a moment and be with this communication and this calling. I'd like to read from a very special book, Steps to Knowledge, the Book of Inner Knowing. And this is the book of preparation for contact with intelligent life in the universe. This is one of the first books to be given in the new message. It's a book of daily practice and application to bring the thinking mind into contact with the knowing mind in light of these great planetary challenges that we now face. I'd like to read step 325. The world is emerging into the greater community of worlds. Therefore, I must be attentive. The world is emerging into the greater community of worlds. How can you recognize this if you are preoccupied with your own concerns, your own hopes, and your own ambitions? How can you recognize what is happening in your world? How can you see those forces that are influencing your outer life and that govern your affairs to such a great extent? Part of becoming strong with knowledge is becoming attentive. You can only become attentive if your mind is not preoccupied with its own imaginings and fantasies. The world is preparing to emerge into the greater community of worlds. And this underlies its evolution and all of its advancements now. That is why conflict is erupting in the world, because those who oppose the evolution of the world will fight against it. Those who wish to further the advancement of the world will attempt to fortify the goodness of humanity and the sense that humanity is one community that must nurture and support itself beyond all division of nation, race, religion, culture, and tribe. Thus it is that you, who are becoming a representative and recipient of knowledge, will fortify peace, unity, understanding, and compassion in the world. All this is part of the preparation of the world to emerge into the greater community of worlds, because this represents the evolution of the world. This represents knowledge within the world. So if this awareness about the greater community of worlds strikes you, touches you at a deep place, the Steps to Knowledge is the way. This book of preparation has been given for you specifically. And I also encourage you to explore other books of the New Message that have also been given to fill in the gaps and support your greater community awareness. One of them is most definitely the book Life in the Universe, Book of Revelation received by Marshall Vion Summers, as well as the greater community Contact with Intelligent Life in the Universe. So this is it. This is the revelation. This is the preparation. This is the community of people responding to the greatest event ever to take place in human life in this world, which is our encounter with other forms of life and the end of our isolation in the universe and the beginning of our destined relationship and greater contact with this vast panorama of life in which we live and all the forces contained therein, those that are negative, those that are neutral, and those that support the emergence of knowledge in our world and in the universe at large. So this is the new reality that we are stepping into, and at the level of knowledge within you, you will feel if this is correct and truthful and destined to be.
I think what's truly amazing is that people are preparing worldwide. People are actively, actually preparing worldwide, coming to terms with their deeper nature, what they know, what they've always known, their greater affinities, their awareness of the greater community. This is happening now. It's hopeful. It's important. We have the opportunity to participate and lead out an important movement for freedom.
So we encourage you to take the next steps, begin steps to knowledge, read the New Message Revelation on Life in the Universe, and come and meet others who are a part of this preparation. And we encourage you to do so at the community site of the New Message, where there are hundreds and hundreds of people undertaking this greater journey in their life. And they would love to meet you, and I'm sure you would love to meet them. And so, until next time, we invite you to come back again tomorrow at 7 o'clock Mountain Time not the Steps Vigil. That's another matter altogether. Mm-hmm. We'll talk about that at the end of this gathering. As the Messenger's Vigil continues, and as we explore more deeply the realities of God beyond religion, God of the greater community, and the new life journey, and then the mission of the message and the messenger to bring this awareness and preparation to the human family. So that's our roadmap together. And night after night, day after day, or morning after morning, whatever it is for you, we are building a reality around this through our contact and engagement with each other and with Marshall. So thank you all, the over 70 people who are gathered here in the Sanctuary of the New Message, Boulder, Colorado, who made that long journey or short journey to be here, and the many, many people around the world who have remarkably encountered this work, who have encountered Marshall and this message and mission to bring greater community awareness and education into the human family. So I honor that in you, and I honor that discovery, and There's so much that's meant to come about because of it. Now that the search has led you to a true discovery, there's so much to come. So, thank you for having the courage. And we'll see you tomorrow as the vigil continues.